Hello and welcome to Logical Magic Examining Esoterica. Hey, today my guest is Rick DellaRatta from Jazz for Peace. He is a musician who believes in the healing ability of music to unite us all. And we're going to have a really special treat here at the end. Rick is going to play for us. And that is one of the reasons that I'm going to go ahead and get the housekeeping out of the way at the very top of this. My name is Alane. If you want to book a tarot reading or a life coaching session with me, you find me at therisingmoon.com. And you can also find me on my YouTube channel, which is Cronecast, not Cronecast, Cronecast with an N, at The Rising Moon. And the only way to book me is through my website. And we're going to cover Rick's social tags as well. But Rick, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
I'm glad to have you, and I'm very excited with the work that you do. Can you tell me a little bit about your philosophy for the ability for jazz to unite people? Where did that come from? How did this begin?
Well, it really started with my own personal journey as a musician. By the time I had graduated college, let's say in Boston at New England Conservatory, I was already, had a lot of performing experience. And then I started touring with bands. Then my own records came out and I started touring under my own name. So I was seeing not only across the country, but across the world, the way that the arts and culture and music united people. And yet I'm hearing all of this conflicting news from all of these, media sources of how we, all these things that we can't get along and we can't, we can't get together. We can't seem to communicate. We can't do this. We can't do that. And I see music doing this and doing that in every which way, breaking barriers of every possible thing that divides us, in a profoundly positive way, having a history, especially with the art form of jazz, but even music and cultural in general. And it just became more and more strange that, it's this weird thing where it's like, if you remove a piece of the puzzle and then you try to solve the puzzle without it, it becomes more and more relevant as you go on. And it was becoming more and more relevant to me that, hey, wait a minute here, this is indigenous, study indigenous people. You'll see arts and culture. You'll just see, all of these things. We're where we are today because these qualities in the arts and culture, such as, humanity and artistry and creativity and intellectuality. In fact, once I started Jazz for Peace, my very first interview, which was shortly after 9/11, I just happened to say to the person interviewing me, if we would just embrace these qualities, we would all have a better chance at avoiding the behavior that leads to destruction. And the sentence was considered so profound, unbeknownst to me, it was lifted from the article. And it's on those famous quotes websites, So, you might go to a famous quote, you might see 10 quotes by Gandhi and this one, that, and the other, but you'll see one by me, and it's that one, which still resonates to this day, as we embracing those qualities. Well, that's what the arts and that's what jazz does. And that led me, of course, to 9/11, where I viewed it from a very kind of a luxury box seat because I was living in the Lower East Side. I basically was tipped off by a photographer who had taken photos of me the day before and was at her day job on Wall Street. Now I'm up on the roof of my building, which is a 5-floor walk up, watching the events of 9/11, it kind of like everyone else, but really an amazing, like really existing, like right there in the movie screen. And all I had to show for it were the words of a poem called Jazz for Peace. And those poems say some of the kinds of things that, I just said to you just now. And I've been just trying to live up to those words every day. That's basically it in a nutshell.
That's part of a spiritual journey. And hey, when we talk about the ability of the arts and music to unite us, it is partially because when we reach into a creative space, we are very likely to develop the ability to channel. Everybody has an ability to channel, but if you continue to expand it, and one of the ways that you can continue to expand it is to go towards creative art forms, which contains a collective consciousness that allows you to tap into the humanity that unites us all. And that when you're talking about how through art and music, and particularly jazz, what we need to talk about with music is that math is incredibly important to music. music. People don't realize that, but at the base of every musical composition is very complex math and counting. Math is considered the universal language, something that unites us all. Wherever you go, everyone may speak a different language, use a different alphabet, but we all use math in the same way. So it is one of the things that unites humanity, and that is why there is such a basis for uniting humanity through our appreciation of arts and music and through creation, which taps into our higher selves, which is the closest we can come to our divine self while in this earthly form. So when you are working with music and when you are composing, part of the reason that you would feel that connection of spirit and of the energy that you're trying to bring to the world is because you are tapping in to a part of you that exists closer and closer to the divine. And I've been listening to some of your music. What moves you when you are writing music or performing music? Do you feel that connection?
Well, absolutely. One thing I'm trying to do, and that's the other thing that makes it such an important piece of the puzzle, is that music and the arts, there's channeling that goes on. And you're such an expert in this area, through your work. But a lot of people just walk around and they're trying to solve a problem, but they're not really using the big picture. They're not opening up. They're not looking at the fact that we're part of a universe, and when you're involved in music, you learn early on. I mean, I learned early on that when I played a Chopin prelude, I was literally, feeling the 1800s, and I'm feeling this man, and I'm feeling how his journey and his harmony and the melancholiness of him that was coming out, and the melody that he wrote, and all these kinds of things. And when with jazz and improvisation, if you've been listening to some of the podcasts, you're hearing a free improvisation. Even you're really trusting the universe in a way and channeling and allowing something to come through you, kind of giving up to a higher spirit. Paranormality and all these things come into play, however they do, which is above my pay grade, not yours, but mine. But, I'm just really trying to allow all of which I've collected to come through me in its own unique way in that moment. And again, that brings us back to the importance of things that we learned, that we've been taught all the way through time. But when we're in the middle of these problems, we forget, and that is, every moving parts are always changing, and there's always this opportunity to address and readdress them, and the arts brings that common ground and foundation into the mix so that we have a chance to reassess and recalculate them in a positive way.
It really does unite us with our higher selves, with our best selves, with the best that we can achieve and the best that we can put forth. Now, Rick, you are a trained classical pianist as well, correct?
Correct.
What led you to jazz?
Well, it started when a piano was moved on Christmas Eve into my house. I'm pretty sure it was a piano dealer who owed my father money for some legal work that he had done for him, because I was young and he was starting out in his profession. This is just a guess, but here comes this piano, because we would get some things that I could tell were probably a barter thing or whatever. So now this piano comes in. It's a big, large guy moving it, and I'm not supposed to be seeing it because I'm supposed to be in bed, not waiting up trying to catch Santa. So I was able to just get enough of a glimpse that I was like, okay, I got what I need. Santa showed up here. He came in and he moved a giant thing, and he's involved, and I don't want to get caught from here. I'm going to cut my losses and just go to sleep now. When I woke up, here was this piano Santa brought in, and I'm like, I'm going to learn this because, he went way out of his way here. He was supposed to come down the chimney, so let me figure this thing out. So, I'm kind of playing it like this, but that was my first improvisation, because I'm playing it and I'm listening and listening, playing it. I'm just trying to figure out on my own with nobody finding out. Then I kind of got told on, or somebody told somebody, hey, look you look at your kid over there or whatever. And now I'm in the classical piano, but now I'm in that. I'm listening to the music on the radio. I'm very happy with just the kid music my friends listen to on the radio. I'd love to be one of those guys, but I'm looking at this classical music like, whoa, something's up there. And I can't really weasel out of that, because there's something of enormous substance in these great composers. So let me go forward with that. It's making me a better piano player by learning it and studying it. So now I have these dualities, and I just couldn't I couldn't break out of either one of them. They both had substance, and they weren't something that I could skirt, out of one and into the other or whatever. And now I find myself in a situation where I was in big trouble when I just kind of bounced into a drawer in the local library, and I'm like, what's in this drawer? And I like had to open it, I don't know, Felix the cat. And now out comes all these jazz records that what they're doing in a drawer, I don't know. And what are they? Now I'm taking those out of the library, and boy, did that, so now I'm kind of like, wow, well, this idiom, first of all, it's a great art form of America, something we should be proud of. And it does support my creative, my curiosity, my creativity. It stimulates my intellect, as music does in general, but jazz, of course, as you know, the mathematical thing that you talked about is massive in jazz. I mean, it's unbelievable. So now I'm, getting all of this out of it. And now I'm realizing, I'm kind of getting enriched with knowledge to the point where after I had that Jazz for Peace poem, I realized I could actually help others through taking a benefit concert series that brings, a world-class cultural event and uniting it with a fundraising model that I had developed, basically from putting on some of my own events and playing at other jazz festivals and seeing how all of these people do their events, a bird's eye view, and then having to do it somewhat myself in situations where I was in a bind and I needed, like, for example, I had a all-star band from a record that I did, but before I could start booking it, I wanted to get that extra leverage on the bookers by showing them that we already did play, the Catch-22. So I actually put on an event, featured my band, and then say, hey, you guys, look, we just played this jazz festival. This is the record. Look at all these big names. Let's get, why don't you guys get on board? So I learned all these things, and I was able to develop a fundraising model, unite the two. And now I was doing something that it was beyond whatever I ever dreamed of from a tragedy. But now I'm doing something that was beyond my wildest dreams, which was uniting people through the art form of jazz and making the world a better place with every note.
One of the things I wanted to touch on is the concept of the fluidity of time. We think of time as being linear, but it isn't. We don't truly, and this is like, MIT science, not woo-woo science, not like junk science. We don't understand the full structure of time. So when you are interacting with something that was created at a different time point and you are emotionally reacting to it, you are in fact sharing emotional, energetic space with people throughout a timeline. So when you referred to at the beginning of this playing Chopin when you were younger, and the idea that it is uniting you with energies that were created more than a century ago, you are having an emotional experience that resonates on the same vibration with somebody that you will never meet in the physical plane, but you are meeting in an emotional and an etheric plane. And that is one of the ways that it unites us. And then, of course, jazz has this famously free-form structure. It's daring, it is bold. It has its roots within the African-American community, where freedom of expression was being kind of discovered for the first time by a community that had been enslaved and repressed. And so the freedom that is kind of inherent within the structure of jazz was incredibly important to people who had been suffering, who found their joy through that creation, through that resonance, through that vibration, and through sharing that experience. And the fact that you are tapping into that in the here and the now, you are calling upon the resonant joy of overcoming struggles. It is a form of conjuring, and it is a form of magic. When you referred to the secondhand piano that was given to your father through a barter deal, or you owe me, give me this instrument, musical instruments, because of that connection throughout the structure of time, are great for carrying enchantments, sometimes curses. But frequently, when you are interacting with an old instrument, you do have access to essentially stored energy that will bring forth a resonant emotional reaction, which when you're talking about when you're playing for a concert and people are reacting to it, they are having a shared emotional experience that stretches out throughout timelines and will unite people in the best and the most positive emotions and feelings that they can be capable of in this particular form. So you really have tapped into something that is truly magical. The arts, and particularly music, is the easiest way to reset your vibration. Now, when did you start playing jazz?
Well, in my town, there was really no way to study jazz per se from an actual teacher. Now jazz education is a big deal, and it's all over the place. But back then there was nobody. So the only thing you could really do was listen to the records and hope that you picked up something from the records. Some people that were maybe saxophone players were a little more astute at that or whatever, because they would really be able to copy the notes, piano players a little hard because you've got, 10 notes, sometimes 5 notes going on at the same time. But nevertheless, that was your student, was the record as best as you could. And then you would have opportunities to improvise in the other styles that you were playing. So I was playing in bands. So if I was in like the grown-up band, they used to pick me up and sneak me in and out of places because I was underage. They would have a little spot where they would showcase me to, improvise, and I would improvise. So that would be my experience with jazz in terms of improvisationally, because I would improvise over the structure of that song, whether it was a rock song, could have been a Grand Funk Revival, or was that the name? What was that American band?
American Bandstand?
Grand Funk Railroad, right? I don't know if you were around in the 70s. You weren't, but anyway, if you go back there, or it could have been Elton John or the Beatles, or it could have been an older song, a Frank Sinatra song, whatever. People are dancing and they're giving it to me to play something. But if I was in the church, it could be the offertory or the communion, where they told me, Rick, I don't know what you're thinking here, but you got to play something, not just accompanying the choir. You got to play. And I was like, I can play, and most of them would be like, they put up Brahms or whatever. And I was studying that. And sometimes I would, but I would say, you know what, these people, they're just asking me for music. So I would improvise and make that up, that's where, and then there was a stage band, where the school band. And of course they found out I could improvise and they started featuring me. So by the time I got in college, then I was able to actually study with a great jazz artist named Jackie Byard.
Is that who you would consider a mentor, or one of the people that you aspire to, the kind of energy that they've created? I know you create your own energy, but we all have those that we admire. Who are your admired artists?
Well, I'll tell you something funny. I was looking at colleges, and they were just looking at these different colleges with my mother and I think a friend of the family friend. And we're looking at colleges, and I'm looking at, they don't even have jazz programs, but the New England Conservatory had a classical program, and then they had a jazz program. And then I saw the name Jackie Byard. Honestly, I didn't know anything about Jackie Byard, but his name, I only felt a connection with his name. And just looking at the name, that's what I mean about all this paranoid stuff like that you're into. There's, to me, I was connecting somehow without even the knowledge. But I was looking at that name and I was like, for some reason or other that I don't even know, that looks like somebody who could help me get to the bottom of things. You know what I mean? That person at that school. So I said, for sure, I want to audition at this school. And I clicked off piano performance thinking that meant all piano, but it didn't to them. It only meant classical. Fortunately, I only played classical and got admitted into the classical program, where I was able to study with him as an elective. And he was like a kind of like a conduit, almost like as an improviser, I'm a conduit for whatever is coming through me. And he was kind of a conduit for me, led me into what, the whole world and ocean of jazz.
That actually, when we talk about improvisational energy in music, and that is actually the energy of creation, please remember that when we're talking about magic, we have this very Harry Potter idea of what magic is. You say a Latin phrase and something floats in the air. And that's not actually what magic is. Magic is energetic manipulation or shaping. And that is exactly what music does, is it structures energy to have a particular resonant pattern can create a particular result. And when you're talking about improvisational jazz in particular, it is most likely to be the one that taps into a person's ability to channel, which you're referring to the idea of being connected to one of the muses when you are referring to being a conduit. I'm considered a divine conduit for the Archangel Gabriel, which is the spirit of advanced communication and the element of air as well. When you are talking about being a conduit for music, that is actually also tapping in to the energy of air, air being at the root of communication. It just has the ability to evoke emotion That is one of the most powerful things about notes within music, is that a particular vibration will evoke an emotional response in people, and we can use it for the positive or we can use it for the negative. If somebody's ever listened to a composer like Wagner, who is very deep and heavy and dense and does not have a very pretty history, if you look at what he personally believed, you can hear it in his very stodgy sort of music. Jazz has a tendency to be about celebrating the freedom of creation, in my experience. And you have been using it to try and perform acts of altruism and philanthropic acts as well. And how do you find people react to it in a concert setting?
Well, what I noticed early on, and what we have proof of anyway, historical proof. I wanted to get historical proof anyway. I just didn't want someone to take my word for anything, because I had been profoundly positively influenced by the art form of jazz. And I didn't need to be in a famous setting or a gorgeous setting or a lot of people there. I didn't need anybody to validate it. I once walked into a tiny little club. There was 3 people on the stage, and the bartender was the waitress. And I was profoundly positively influenced by what I saw on the stage, with me being the only person in there. So I knew it had the ability to have a profoundly positive impact on just one person, just the music alone, with everything going right, the right time, the right moment, with everything. So we had looked up a guy named Charles Black, who was he was actually one of the authors of Brown versus the Board of Education and numerous other documents. Yeah. And he had authored a lot of these things, and people asked him, you came from a little town in the Midwest. What do you think made you such a high achiever? Whereas maybe other people just lived a very, normal life like they're supposed to live. And he said jazz, and shocked people. And they said, why? And he said, well, because he was in a venue where he was supposed to be maybe dancing and finding his future wife, and he got fixated on the trumpet player in the band, who happened to be Louis Armstrong. He didn't know it at the time. And he get fixated on the trumpet player, and when the band left, and when he left that night, he decided that he had figured out on his own that person playing that trumpet was a genius. Now he had to wonder, well, wait a minute now, if that guy is a genius, which he is, why wouldn't a genius be allowed to vote? Why would a genius this? Why would a genius that? Now it opened up a whole Pandora's box, and again, changed his life in a profoundly positive way, where he ended up becoming an advocate, and all kinds of achievements are attributed to him in our history during those following years. So I had that going for me already. So all I needed to do now was find outstanding causes that we could assist. And I realized that if I myself could get sponsors, like I had to do in that story I told you, where I put on my own jazz festival to kind of launch my band, so that other people would have it at their jazz festivals. If I could get sponsors for my jazz festival, which had never even been a jazz festival before I invented it, and I could get publicity and awareness, and I could rejuvenate my fan base and supporters. I could expand my support base. I could get new and prestigious supporters, and it could generate income. If I could do it, then surely Jazz for Peace now, as a poem and as a movement, could do it. And so that's where I got the fundraising model to put with the music. And now we had something that was affecting people in numerous ways, because now I had outstanding causes writing me letters saying, wow, you have affected our program in this way or that way, or with this combination, and in their own words. And that's why we have a list of testimonials. It's actually, I'll have to send you that separately, because it's not technically our website, but it's jazzforpeace.wordpress.com/about. And that's a separate page, but it just has archived information that people can see, what these actual people said in their own words. And when I saw them saying it in their words, how am I going to argue with someone who's telling me, you're the one, we're the one you played for, and this is what we thought of what you did. So now I knew I was onto something.
When you talk about benefiting causes, specifically, what causes have you been trying to benefit with the performances that you undertake?
Basically, one of the very first concerts that we did after 9/11 was to help the families of the victims of 9/11. And that was an organization, I think they were called September's Mission or something like that, but it was just little concerts around New York City because I figured there must be at least a dozen outstanding causes that help organizations. I had no idea there were 60,000 nonprofits, in New York City alone. There's over 1.5 million in the United States, and there's 10 million worldwide. Now, how many of them are the greatest? Well, that's another thing that Jazz for Peace does. We separate the wheat from the chaff by trying to bring out organizations. They don't have to be big. They don't have to be small, old, or new. They just have to be passionate and willing to put their mission first. That's what nonprofit is supposed to be. I don't know why people don't get it, but it's supposed to be achievement over profit.
And that precisely, it is to do something within this world to try and make a difference for the better. You spoke at the top of this about the divisiveness that has kind of settled across our entire society, and how do we start by taking that out? And one of the ways that we do is stop investing in power structures that are power structures only with an eye to maintaining power. If we're investing in churches or politics or anything that is about recouping money and building more power and having more influence over a person's ability to think and feel, they likely have their own agenda. When we talk about altruistic works or philanthropic works, what we're trying to do is benefit the actual people rather than a power structure. And that is why I think that jazz is so uniquely suited to that, because jazz did not follow known rules beforehand. It began making its own rules and breaking new barriers in creativity, where it showed people what could be done in an improvisational style. Now, if you've ever read sheet music, and a bazillion years ago, I sang in a church choir, so I actually can read sheet music, not as comprehensively as would be required for a concert musician, quite obviously. But I understand the complexity of the different notes that are presented. One of the things that jazz does is it says you can take that same complexity, but you do not have to have rigid and traditional rules around it. So jazz is the great equalizer in that it addresses and kind of works around and flows underneath and over traditional structure in music, and it still creates something that is cohesive and flowing and uniting. And so one of the things that philanthropic works and altruistic works do is it puts the people back, the power back in people's hands. And that is really the solution to the divisiveness that has settled over our entire society. Is we think that our power structures have the power to enact change. No, we do. You can choose where you direct your energy. You can choose where you direct your focus, which is all a part of magical creation. And one of the things that jazz can do is to help it take that creative energy, and it will take the form, the shape, and the sound that it is meant to. So when you're playing, how long have you been playing, by the way, Rick?
I started, well, that situation with the Santa Claus incident, I think I was about 6 years old when I actually started taking piano lessons.
Oh, wow.
So maybe I was 5 or right, yeah, 5. Maybe I was like 5 or 6 when that happened, something like that. Yeah, but probably was already 6, and then shortly after that, I ended up in piano lessons.
So music is the connective tissue in your life.
I've only had one other job, and I had to quit it. I was a paper boy. And that was my first job, and I was kind of ambitious. I had a paper route, a morning paper route. Somebody gave me their afternoon route, and I thought I was, pulling in some money here for my future. But the next thing I know, my homeroom teacher, his kids wanted to start a band for the school dances, and then that happened. Then there was a grown-up band that wanted to play, in the grown-up places, whatever that was, the private parties, whatever it was, clubs. And then my mother with the church, she wanted me to take over her on the at the church organ. And then I had to just drop out of the paperboy business.
So this really has been essentially the foundation of your life, which is, whenever I meet musicians, their relationship to home is different than many other walks of life, because you are constantly moving and constantly going to different places to perform. So has that actually been essentially your home base, is music?
I never, like I said, I never had another job per se that I know of besides music. Although I have now branched into other forms, other things in the arts, just because after a while, if you're on stage enough, you will be kind of considered talent if you want to be. If you want to branch out, people will consider you talent because they know, this guy's been on stage. He knows what to do. He knows what to do in front of an audience. So, I actually have a resume now as an actor because of a situation that happened where I ended up in a play, and then I had to switch parts because they couldn't find someone that could sing a song. I was actually in a play where I was I won the one of three star parts in a play. They were like doofuses. I forgot the name of this play. But anyway, it was they were like nerds. So I was trying to play this total nerd, and I was singing. We were supposed to sing the songs badly, and they actually had to correct me and said, you're singing this, you're singing it too good. You've got to, it's got to be bad. You're a nerd here. You can't pick up girls. You're a nerd. You sing terrible. Okay, got it. Okay, so I'm doing all that, and then there was the guy who could pick up the girls. They couldn't get, and they're auditioning person after person, and I saw that. I'm like, oh my god, I'm the only guy that can do this job. They just, because these actors, they could sing like you had to sing it. It had to because a jazz singer was needed. It was the craziest thing. So I'm watching this. I'm not telling anybody because I don't want to lose my role. And I'm here to act. I'm not here to like Rick DellaRatta, the musician, fits in. But somehow someone blew my cover. I had to switch roles. And then the person running the thing was like, wait a minute, you can go from here to here. You might be she had like a little, so now she's sending me out on things. Anyway, one thing leads to another. So I have, I've been a comedian. I've done comic shows. I've done acting things. So anything in the arts, I kind of can do and will do at the right moment. But, as far as music, the only problem with music is the growth never ends. So I'm always looking at a day where it's like, I'm working on something and I'd like to make a little progress. I'd love to be, in your this or your that, but I'm not going to like be too ambitious because if that could cost me this little like inch further on this improvisational concept that I'm in. So you got that. But, the arts in general, yes, I can pretty much embrace all of the arts now with my, just with all of the experience I have as a musician and a band leader and a singer and all that.
And the arts lead us towards the vital energy of creation. So it is one of the things that people can go towards when they're feeling, we're very obsessed with youth in this country. But the fact is that youth is not about a number. It is about the vitality that you have and the interest in life. And this is one of the areas that people can begin exploring when they want to reclaim that vital energy, when they want to feel the energy of creation flowing through them. The easiest thing is to go towards an art, and you do not have to be an expert at something to receive the benefits of that universal flow coming down through you. So music lessons, art lessons, and as you said, you branched out into acting. It sounds like you are most comfortable in the role of a performer. Are you actually introverted? Lots of performers are actually very introverted and most comfortable on stage. Do you consider yourself an extrovert or an introvert?
Yes, there was a time when I once actually even told my manager at the time, I said, my home is the stage. I am more comfortable on the stage than in my own home and than in anybody else's home and on the streets or wherever. The most comfortable I am is actually on the stage. And it's kind of tragic because we're not on the stage long enough to be considered anything except at least partially homeless. So,
True, it's very transient energy, isn't it? That makes sense.
Yeah, so I mean, I was in a way homeless with a home every now and then, but that was where I really felt the most at home.
And that's the creative, energetic flow that has called out to you the most. As you said, you were only ever a paper boy, and now you've been a musician for the entirety of your life, as well as branching out into other art forms. Rick, what do you have coming up?
Well, one thing we've been doing, what I usually do, I try to look at something that if I don't do it, nobody's going to do it. And right now, we're at a real crossfire because we have rights that we've had all along that are diminishing, and we could literally lose them altogether. And I'm looking at around at a world that doesn't seem to understand how difficult it would be to get those rights back if we lost
Oh,
them.
yes.
And
Yeah.
three of them are all encompassed in one person's issue. So you've got one of them is freedom of speech. So you've got a very serious situation with freedom of speech that's going on, and our freedom of speech is being attacked. Then you've got journalistic integrity. So you have situations where journalists are, first of all, most of them now, the paying jobs, you're not really a journalist anymore. You're a mouthpiece for so and so or such and such companies. The companies that are buying the advertising time, you're kind of their mouthpiece. But there are people who are passionate about being a journalist still. There always will be. They want to be on the cutting edge and reporting what's happening. Well, you've got journalist integrity. Journalists are being attacked. There's the shooting the messenger thing going on, where it's like, hey, you can report, but if you report about anything we don't like, we're gonna come after you. And then the third thing is, we're in the fourth turning. I don't know if you ever heard of it. You know it.
Strauss-Howe theory. It's the Strauss-Howe theory. Yes, I'm familiar with it.
All right. So the fourth turning is a time of war. It's a time where even if there's not a war going on, with guns and bayonets, it looks like a war zone, as COVID looked like a war zone out here, in New York City and I don't know where you are, but so it's a time of war. It's like a war situation. And now there's a big concern of, well, what about innocent civilians? What about women and children? What about people who are unarmed? And what about if they get bombed and a video comes out about it and the person can't, talk about it because they're going to bomb him? So that's all related to this Julian Assange issue. And so what happened was I'm one of the only people who knows the real spelling of jazz. I was in Haiti and I, went up to do my performance. They had a big giant sign that said, "Welcome, Jazz for Peace, JASS." And that's because jazz is a Creole word. And it was Creole people who came from Ghana to Haiti to New Orleans who were listening to those people, as you mentioned earlier, that were just developing the art form raw, as it was in its development stages. They're not going to, kings and queens aren't going to hire you to play something that you haven't even developed yet. You know what I mean? So they're playing for whoever will listen, which at that time was people who, were looking for some free entertainment. And that's Haitian people that were in New Orleans. They called it jazz, but it was JASS. We then we misspelled it as JAZZ. And that led to me being able to now do three things. One, free jazz, which is the free improvisation, is a part of jazz. And I had a jazz great once that was playing in my band and doing some shows with me tell me, "Hey, man, you got to keep the free jazz movement going on. I love that piece we did last night, blah, blah, blah." So people stick these little bugs in my ear. And then if I respect them enough, I think, Jesus, maybe I should try to do that. So now it's a free jazz piece that has no S's and no Z's, so it's called Free JA, which relates to the Julian Assange situation with all three of those qualities that I want to save and I want to preserve and I want to alert people. So now we have these performances of Free JA, which I'm hoping will result in something good with relation to his turnout, which relates to these rights that are in jeopardy. And I've been performing them. We're almost up to 100 performances of that. So in addition to the benefit concert series, the educational programs in the schools and the instrument donation programs, I'm also doing something that might not resonate because most of these things don't resonate until down the road. But I'm doing this because it resonates now with me. So I get it at least, called Free JA. And that's these free improvisations.
Just really quickly touching on the Julian Assange tie-in. Whatever you think of him personally, this was a person who was willing to stand up for freedom of information. I don't like him personally, but I do like what he stands for, which is that we have the right to know what our government is doing, essentially. And when we're talking about the Strauss-Howe theory, I'm going to break that down really quickly for people. It is a sociological theory that there are 4 generations: the first turning, second turning, third turning, and fourth turning. If you want to look at them as the boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Y is called the fourth turning, and is actually the revolutionary energy of the fourth turning. There is the stability of the first, the boomers. There is the apathy of the second, which is the Gen X. There is the continued decay of the millennials. And then the fourth generation in the fourth turning brings meaningful sociological and societal change. Sometimes that will come through as revolution, and sometimes it will come through as it did when, like, flower children were engaging in it with a more peaceful methodology. And we, of course, want to go towards the most peaceful resolutions that we can possibly have. All right, Rick, I think that's a really good segue into, would you like to play something for us today?
Okay, so what I'm going to do now, what I normally do, because I am going to play literally free jazz, and that's, I'm going to make it up on the spot. No one's going to, I don't even know what it's, I have no idea what it's going to be. But what I
for
often do
us,
is I'll play a little melody that might bring some familiarity into the program, and then go from there and hope to hold the listener or lure them into this thing that I don't even know what I'm going to do. So this is a little song, because right now it's June and it's in New York, and this is a little old jazz standard about New York in June. So I'm just going to play something that.
How about you?
How about
New York in
you?
June? How about you? I like a spring in bloom. How about you? I remember that.
That's exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm going to do that, which describes now and where we are and where I am. And then I'm going to lead into what will be the, whatever it is, 90th somethingest version of Free JA.
All right.
I like New York in June. How about you? I like a Gershwin too. How about you? I like a fireside when a storm is due. I like potato chips, moonlight and motor trips. How about you? I'm mad about good books, can't get my fill. And Marilyn Monroe's looks give me a thrill. Holding hands by the movie show when all the lights are low may not be new, but I like it. How about you?
Well, that was beautiful. Everyone, that was Rick DellaRatta. He is from Jazz for Peace, JA for Peace. Thank you so much for joining me today, Rick. I truly appreciate your time. I appreciate your methods, and I appreciate your talent as well. Thank you for sharing them with us today. Do you have anything to say in closing, sir?
Well, one thing I would like to say, just because it kind of fell on the ground while I was playing, is we're in a very interesting time right now where we have technology that is taking away jobs, but many of those jobs were jobs that were causing spiritual issues in people that were doing them when their spirit was growing past that activity. Then they needed to continue that activity to do that job. And so there's two ways of looking at things. One is that we could now get everybody involved in saving the world simply because they don't have to go and flip a burger. We can actually give them all those things are generating income. And instead of giving all of that income maybe to Jeff Bezos, which is absurd, we could give that income to the people who now don't have to, care whatever it is they would manufacture a toy and say, listen, what are you passionate about when it comes to helping our planet heal? Let them go and do that. And guess what? If you go and do that, now you can get paid based on your achievement of what it is that you are passionate about, that you want to contribute to society. And now we could go in the complete other direction. So there are opportunities like that. These are the kinds of things that Jazz for Peace wants to instill in people's hearts and minds. And that is that for every problem out there, there are handfuls, maybe dozens of outstanding causes that would love to just be more funded, for the people to more publicized, to be more befriended, more sponsored, so that they weren't spending 300 days looking for money and 65 days trying to follow their mission. And instead reverse these paradigms. The fourth turning that you I couldn't have done a near as good a job as you at describing, so thank you. But that fourth turning that you described is one where we get so backwards that sometimes the solution is just turning it like this. Mm-hmm. So many of the solutions are in front of us, and I suggest the first thing we do is put the arts and culture on your team when you're trying to solve our world's problems.
Oh, exactly. If we have, and it's impossible to deny that as a world, as a society, we have many burdens and we have many struggles. Looking to the existing power structures, the political structures, and again, religions, because religions also have their own agenda, has not yielded good solutions. So we need to look to one another, decide where your energy is going to go, decide what you wish to accomplish, and perhaps circumvent the power structures that have always let us down. And we start working together. And together, guys, we could make a really big difference and make the world a better place for as many people as humanly possible. We are all united, we are all one, and we can all feel the resonant joy of connection through jazz and other art forms. Thank you so much for joining me. That was Logical Magic, Examining Esoterica. Live magically, guys. I will see you next time.